You don't notice it the first week. Nothing dramatic happens. Your card still works. Your paycheck still lands. The numbers still look functional. But something shifts. You start moving money before you spend it. You delay one bill to cover another. You tell yourself you'll fix it next month. And then one morning you open your banking app. And the number isn't small anymore. It's negative. Not because of one reckless decision. Not because of a crisis. But because of a month that slowly tilted. And you didn't feel the angle changing. This is the month your account goes negative. And most people don't realize it's happening. Until it already has. You check your balance on a Tuesday. Not because something happened. Not because you're worried. Just one of those small automatic moments. You're at the grocery store, or you're sitting in the car before you go inside somewhere, and you just check. And the number is lower than you expected. Not catastrophically lower. Just lower. Maybe by $80. Maybe $140. Maybe it's the kind of difference where you stare at it for a second, do rough math in your head, and then put your phone away without saying anything to anyone, including yourself. You don't panic. You just feel it. That small, quiet tightening in the chest. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that just settles in and waits. And here's the thing. This probably isn't the first time this has happened. If you're honest with yourself, it's been happening, in different amounts, at different points in the month, for a while now. Some months are fine. Some months feel like you're just barely making it across the finish line. And every so often, there's a month where the account dips below zero for a day or two before the next paycheck lands. You recover. You always recover. So it doesn't feel like a crisis. But it isn't random. Let's start with the actual mechanics of what's happening, because most people never look at this clearly enough. Your income arrives in a predictable rhythm. Twice a month, maybe weekly, maybe every other Friday. And the moment it lands, it begins disappearing in a rhythm that almost nobody designs intentionally. Rent or mortgage, that's usually the first major exit. Then utilities, which vary enough that you can't quite nail them down. Then subscriptions. And this is where things start to get quietly complicated, because subscriptions don't come out all at once. They're staggered. Your streaming service on the 3rd. Your gym on the 8th. Your cloud storage on the 14th. Your insurance auto-payment on the 19th. The software you forgot you still pay for on the 22nd. Nobody chose to spread them out like that strategically, or at least you didn't. But that's how they landed. And the effect of that staggering is that your account is never fully depleted in one clean moment. It's being drawn down slowly, unevenly, across the entire month. Meanwhile, variable expenses, groceries, gas, a dinner out, a prescription you didn't budget for, they arrive whenever they arrive. Life doesn't schedule itself against your paycheck calendar. So what you have is a system where predictable income meets unpredictable timing, and the result is that your balance is almost never what you think it is when you check it casually. There's always something pending. Always something that cleared this morning that you hadn't accounted for in your mental math. This isn't a discipline problem. It's a timing mismatch. And timing mismatches are invisible until suddenly they're not. The month your account goes negative usually isn't the month something big went wrong. It's usually the month 3 small things collided with bad timing. Now let's look at what this looks like over time, because one negative month could just be bad luck. But most people, when they really sit with it, realize this has a pattern. Think about the last 12 months. How many of them ended with you feeling financially comfortable? How many ended with you feeling like you made it through? And how many had at least one moment, one check, one transfer, one anxious calculation, where you were genuinely uncertain whether you'd clear your obligations? For a lot of people, the honest answer is that comfortable months are fewer than they should be given their income. And that gap, between what the income should theoretically support and what actually gets experienced month to month, that gap has a cumulative cost that goes far beyond dollars. There's a concept in behavioral psychology called cognitive load. It refers to the mental energy we spend managing information and uncertainty. Financial uncertainty is one of the most persistent sources of cognitive load that exists. When you don't know if your account will be fine at the end of the month, some part of your brain is always running that calculation in the background. Always. When you're eating dinner. When you're trying to sleep. When you're in a meeting at work and you suddenly remember the car payment comes out Thursday. Over months and years, that background calculation doesn't just cause stress. It changes how you make decisions. People under sustained financial uncertainty tend to make shorter horizon choices. They prioritize the immediate over the important. Not because they're impulsive, but because the immediate feels like the only thing they can actually control. And so the pattern reinforces itself. The month goes negative. You recover. You feel brief relief. The background calculation resets. And 30 days later, the whole thing begins again. Slow. Quiet. Repeating. Most people don't describe this as a crisis. They describe it as just how their finances are. There's a structural reason this happens to so many people at so many income levels, and I want to talk about it without making it sound like a conspiracy or an excuse, because it's either. It's just design. Modern financial life is built on what you might call a float economy. Almost every service that bills you regularly, whether it's a utility, a subscription, an insurance provider, a lender, has a quiet financial interest in when exactly your money moves. Companies optimize their billing cycles not around your paycheck schedule, but around their own cash flow needs and their ability to collect before you have a chance to redirect funds elsewhere. At the same time, the banking system operates on a processing lag that hasn't fully caught up with how people actually live. Pending transactions aren't always reflected accurately in available balances. Direct deposits can hit at different times depending on the weekend calendar. ACH transfers take days in a world where we expect things instantly. And credit, the system that exists, in theory, to smooth over these gaps, often comes with costs that make the gap wider over time rather than narrower. Using a credit card to bridge a timing mismatch is a reasonable short-term solution. But if the balance doesn't get cleared fully each month, you're essentially paying rent on the bridge. And the rent compounds. None of this was designed specifically to create the month your account goes negative. But the combined effect of staggered billing, processing lags, and the way credit products are structured means that for most people living close to their monthly means, which is most people, the conditions for a negative month are almost always present. It's not a trap. It's a design that doesn't account for how humans actually experience time and money. And once you see that, something shifts. When you understand the mechanism, the emotion changes. That quiet tightening in your chest when the balance is lower than expected, it doesn't disappear, but it becomes something different. It becomes information rather than indictment. Because that's what shame does to financial anxiety. It converts information into judgment. And judgment is harder to act on than information. A lot of people who experience that negative month, or those near negative months, carry a private story that it reflects something about them. About their discipline, their intelligence, their worth. That story is not only inaccurate, it's functionally counterproductive. Because when you believe a financial problem is a character flaw, you're less likely to examine it clearly and more likely to avoid looking at it at all. Avoidance is extremely common. Not checking the account. Approximate math that's always slightly optimistic. Choosing not to open certain notifications. These are not signs of irresponsibility. They're psychological responses to a situation that feels both threatening and unchangeable. The brain avoids what it believes it cannot fix. But here's what changes when you understand the mechanics. The situation becomes legible. A timing mismatch is a problem with a structure. A structure can be looked at. It can be mapped. It can be adjusted, incrementally, carefully, without drama. Money, at its most basic level, isn't about wealth or ambition or success. It's about stability. The ability to move through time without constant low-grade emergency. And that stability isn't built through earning more, necessarily. It's built through reducing the uncertainty your nervous system has to carry every month. That reduction starts with looking clearly at what's actually happening. I'm not going to tell you to build a 6-month emergency fund or reorganize your entire financial life this weekend. That advice exists, and it has its place, but it doesn't meet people where they actually are. What I want to suggest instead is something smaller and more immediate. It's about mapping the timing before the timing maps you. The first thing that's worth doing, not exciting, but genuinely useful, is sitting down once and writing out, not your expenses, but the dates your expenses come out. Just the dates. You'll likely find 2 or 3 clusters in the month where multiple things are pulling at the same time. Those clusters are where your negative months are born. Seeing them on paper changes how you think about them. The second thing is identifying which of those recurring withdrawals have any flexibility in their billing date. More than you might expect do. Many subscription services, insurance companies, and even some lenders will change your billing date if you simply ask. Moving 1 or 2 withdrawals away from a cluster, spreading the load more evenly across the month, can quietly reduce how often you hit that low balance moment. The third thing is the concept of a buffer account. Not an emergency fund. Just a small, separate account, even $50 or $100, that sits between your checking balance and zero. Something you treat as the floor, not as money available to spend. The psychological effect of having even a small buffer is disproportionate to its size. It shortens the amount of time your nervous system spends in that background calculation mode. And the fourth thing, maybe the most important, is reducing the cost of being wrong. Which means if you've been using credit to bridge timing gaps, looking honestly at the monthly interest cost and deciding whether there's a way to reduce that cost, even slightly, over the next 3 months. Not eliminating it overnight. Just reducing the rent on the bridge. None of these are transformative in isolation. But they're the kind of changes that, over 6 months, make the account going negative moment significantly rarer. Not impossible, but rarer. And rarer, in this context, is worth a great deal. You'll probably check your balance again today, or tomorrow, or sometime this week. And it might still be lower than you want it to be. That's okay. That's not the end of the story, it's just a data point in a longer one. What I hope stayed with you from this is not anxiety, and not a list of things you need to fix immediately. What I hope you took is a slightly different way of seeing the moment. The quiet tightening in the chest when the number is wrong, that isn't evidence that you're failing. It's evidence that you're paying attention. And attention, directed clearly and without shame, is the actual beginning of financial stability. Not the end of all the difficult months. Not the absence of uncertainty. Just a calmer relationship with the uncertainty that exists. The ability to look at the number, understand roughly why it is what it is, and take one small, considered step, not from panic, but from clarity. That's what surviving financially actually looks like for most people. Not a dramatic turnaround. Not a breakthrough moment. Just a gradual, quiet shift from being swept along by the timing of your own money, toward understanding it well enough to move with slightly more intention. The month your account goes negative probably isn't the worst thing that's ever happened to you financially. But it doesn't have to keep happening on its own terms. You can start learning its rhythm. And then, slowly, you can begin to change it.